Have you ever wondered what you'd do if someone tried to break into your home in the middle of the night? Most of us like to believe our homes are safe, that the locks on our doors and the walls around us are enough to keep the darkness out. But sometimes the darkness finds a way in. Tonight, I'm going to share with you 4 real home invasion stories. Stories that aren't just urban legends or campfire tales, but true accounts that happen to real people, in real neighborhoods just like yours. These stories aren't meant to scare you for fun. They're meant to remind you that sometimes the scariest things aren't the monsters under your bed, but the strangers who might be standing just outside your door. Story 1. The Man at the Window. It was the summer before my senior year of high school, and I was home alone for the first time in my life. My parents had gone out of town for a weekend wedding, and I'd convinced them I was old enough to handle a couple of nights by myself. I was excited at first. No curfew, no one telling me to turn down the TV, just me in the house. The first night was uneventful. Made popcorn, watched a horror movie, and stayed up way too late scrolling through my phone. But the second night, something felt off from the moment I got home from my part-time job. The air in the house felt heavier, like the silence was pressing in on me. I tried to shake it off, blaming it on the scary movie I'd watched the night before. I locked all the doors, double-checked the windows, and settled in for another night of freedom. Around midnight, I was lying in bed half asleep when I heard a soft tapping sound. At first, I thought it was just a tree branch against the window, but then it came again, more deliberate this time. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up, my heart pounding, and listened. The sound was coming from the window right next to my bed. I wanted to believe it was nothing, but curiosity got the better of me. I crept over to the window and pulled back the curtain just a crack. That's when I saw him, a man, maybe in his 40s, standing just outside, his face inches from the glass. He was smiling, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that makes your skin crawl, the kind that says, "I know you're alone." I froze, unable to move or even breathe. He raised his hand and tapped on the glass again, his eyes never leaving mine. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. My phone was on the nightstand, but I was too scared to take my eyes off the window. I finally managed to grab it and dial 911, whispering to the operator that someone was outside my window. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and lock myself in the bathroom. I did as she said, locking the door and sitting on the floor, my back pressed against the cold tile. I could hear the man moving around the house, trying the doors, rattling the windows. Every sound made my heart race faster. It felt like hours before I heard the distant wail of sirens. The man must have heard them too, because suddenly everything went quiet. When the police arrived, they searched the yard but found nothing. The man was gone, vanished into the night. They told me I was lucky, that he probably would have tried to break in if I hadn't called for help. I never slept in that room again, and for months afterward, I couldn't look out a window at night without seeing that smile. Story 2. The Basement Door. Some people say you should always trust your gut. I never really believed that until the night someone tried to break into my house. I was living in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and crime is almost unheard of. My parents were out for the evening, and I was home with my younger brother, Jake. We were watching TV in the living room when I heard a strange noise coming from the basement. It sounded like something heavy being dragged across the floor. At first, I thought it was just the old furnace acting up again, but then Jake looked at me, his eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I nodded, trying to act braver than I felt. I muted the TV and listened. The noise came again, louder this time. It was definitely coming from the basement. I grabbed a flashlight and told Jake to stay put. I crept down the hallway, every step feeling heavier than the last. The basement door was closed, but I could see the faint glow of a light coming from underneath. I pressed my ear to the door and listened. I could hear someone moving around down there, footsteps shuffling across the concrete floor. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. I backed away from the door and ran to the kitchen to grab my phone. I called my dad, whispering that I thought someone was in the basement. He told me to get Jake and leave the house immediately. I grabbed my brother's hand, and we slipped out the back door, running to the neighbor's house as fast as we could. The police arrived within minutes. They found the basement window pried open and muddy footprints leading up the stairs. Whoever it was had been trying to get into the main part of the house when we left. The officers said we did the right thing by leaving, instead of trying to confront whoever was down there. For weeks after, I couldn't walk past the basement door without feeling a chill run down my spine. I still don't know who was in our house that night, or what they wanted. But I'll never forget the feeling of knowing someone was down there, just a few feet away, separated only by a thin wooden door. Story 3, the locked bedroom. There's a certain comfort in routine, in the little things you do every night before bed. For me, it was always the same. Brush my teeth, check the locks, turn off the lights, and finally close my bedroom door. I lived alone in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building, the kind with creaky floors and thin walls. I'd always felt safe there, high above the street, with only one way in or out. But one night, that sense of safety was shattered in a way I'll never forget. It was a Thursday, and I'd had a long day at work. I came home, made dinner, and watched a few episodes of my favorite show before heading to bed. I did my usual routine, double-checking the deadbolt on the front door and making sure the windows were locked. I remember feeling especially tired that night, the kind of exhaustion that makes your limbs heavy and your mind foggy. I fell asleep almost as soon as my head hit the pillow. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to a strange sound. At first, I thought it was just the building settling, but then I heard it again, a soft metallic click like someone trying to turn a doorknob. I lay there frozen, listening. The sound came again, this time louder. It was coming from the hallway, right outside my bedroom door. My heart started to race as I realized what it was. Someone was trying to open my door. I reached for my phone, but it wasn't on the nightstand where I always left it. Panic set in as I remembered I'd left it charging in the living room. I was completely alone with no way to call for help. I listened as the doorknob rattled, then stopped. There was a long, tense silence, broken only by the sound of my own breathing. Then suddenly, I heard footsteps moving away from my door, down the hallway toward the living room. I forced myself to get out of bed, moving as quietly as I could. I pressed my ear to the door and listened. I could hear someone moving around in the living room, opening drawers, rifling through my things. I remembered the fire escape outside my bedroom window and realized it might be my only way out. I quietly unlocked the window and slid it open, trying not to make a sound. The cool night air hit my face as I climbed out onto the fire escape, my heart pounding in my chest. I made my way down the metal stairs, every step echoing in the quiet night. When I reached the ground, I ran to the nearest building and pounded on the door until someone answered. I told them what was happening and they called the police. When the officers arrived, they found my front door unlocked and my apartment ransacked. Whoever had broken in was gone, but they'd left behind muddy footprints and a crowbar on the living room floor. The police said I was lucky to have gotten out when I did. They told me that most burglars just want to steal and leave, but you never know when someone might be desperate or dangerous. I moved out of that apartment a month later, unable to shake the feeling of being watched, of knowing that someone had been inside my home while I slept. To this day, I still check the locks 3 times before going to bed, and I never leave my phone out of reach. Story 4, the silent intruder. Some stories don't have a clear beginning or end. Sometimes the scariest part is not knowing exactly what happened or why. This last story was sent to me by someone who wishes to remain anonymous, but their experience is one that will stay with you long after the video ends. It was late autumn, and the nights were getting colder. The person who sent this story lived in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where everyone knows each other, and nothing bad ever seems to happen. They just moved into a new house with their partner, excited to start a new chapter in their lives. The house was old but charming, with creaky floors and a big backyard. They spent the first few weeks unpacking, painting, and making the place feel like home. One night after a long day of work and unpacking, they went to bed early. Their partner was working a night shift, so they were alone in the house. They locked all the doors and windows, set the alarm, and settled into bed with a book. Sometime after midnight, they woke up to a strange feeling, a sense that something was wrong. At first, they thought it was just a bad dream, but then they heard it. The faint sound of footsteps on the hardwood floor downstairs. They lay perfectly still, listening. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, moving from room to room. The person's heart pounded in their chest as they realized someone was in the house. They reached for their phone, but it was dead, forgotten on the charger in the kitchen. They considered hiding in the closet, but the only thing they could think to do was stay as quiet as possible and hope the intruder wouldn't come upstairs. The footsteps continued for what felt like an eternity, moving from the kitchen to the living room, then back again. At one point, they heard the sound of something being dragged across the floor, like a chair or a heavy bag. They tried to control their breathing, terrified that even the smallest sound would give them away. Eventually, the footsteps stopped, and the house fell silent again. They lay awake for hours, too afraid to move. When the sun finally came up, they crept downstairs to find the front door wide open and muddy footprints leading out into the yard. Nothing was missing, and there was no sign of forced entry. The police couldn't explain how the intruder had gotten in or why they'd left without taking anything. The only evidence was the footprints and the lingering sense of unease that would haunt them for months to come. Sometimes the scariest home invasions aren't the ones where things are stolen or people are hurt. Sometimes it's the ones where you never find out who was there or what they wanted. It's the not knowing that keeps you up at night, replaying every sound, every shadow, every creak of the floorboards, wondering if the darkness will ever really leave. You might think that after hearing stories like these, sleep would come a little harder and you'd be right. But what's even more unsettling is how these experiences linger, not just in the memory, but in the way you move through your own home. The familiar becomes unfamiliar. The safe becomes suspect. Every shadow, every creak, every gust of wind against the window suddenly feels like a warning. And yet, for the people who lived through these stories, life had to go on. They had to find a way to reclaim their sense of safety, even if it meant changing everything about the way they lived. After the silent intruder, the anonymous storyteller and their partner installed new locks on every door and window. They bought a security system, motion lights, even a dog, but the fear didn't leave. It just changed shape. It became a habit, checking the doors 3 times before bed, leaving a light on in every room, jumping at every unexpected sound. Their partner tried to reassure them, saying it was just a one-time thing, that lightning doesn't strike twice. But the storyteller knew better. Once you've felt that kind of fear, it never really goes away. Just waits quiet and patient in the back of your mind. Contrast that with the first story, the man at the window. There's something uniquely terrifying about seeing a stranger's face so close to your own, separated only by a thin pane of glass. For weeks after, the storyteller couldn't sleep in their own room. They moved to the couch, then to a friend's house, then back again, always looking over their shoulder. Their parents tried to make them feel safe, installing new locks and even trimming the bushes outside the window. But the memory of that smile, that sense of being watched, was harder to erase. It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones that look just like us. The person from the basement door story found themselves haunted by the sound of footsteps on concrete. Every time they heard a noise in the house, their mind went back to that night. The fear, the adrenaline, the desperate need to protect their younger brother. They started sleeping with a baseball bat under the bed, just in case. Their parents tried to downplay what happened, saying it was probably just a drifter looking for a place to sleep. But the police never found anyone, and the muddy footprints leading up the stairs were proof enough that it wasn't just their imagination. Sometimes the only thing separating you from danger is a locked door and a little bit of luck. And then there's the locked bedroom story. The storyteller moved out of their apartment, but the fear followed them. They started having nightmares. Dreams where they'd wake up to find someone standing at the foot of their bed, or worse, lying next to them. They bought a new phone, one with a louder alarm and a brighter flashlight. They started carrying pepper spray, even in broad daylight. Friends told them they were being paranoid, but they knew better. Once you've had your sanctuary violated, it's hard to ever feel truly safe again. What ties all these stories together isn't just the fear of the unknown, but the way that fear changes you. It's not just about the night itself, but the nights that come after. The way you check the locks, the way you listen for footsteps, the way you flinch at every unexpected sound. It's about the way your mind replays the events over and over, searching for something you missed, some clue that could have warned you, some way you could have stopped it. It's about the way you start to see danger everywhere, even in the places you used to feel safest. But there's another side to these stories, too. A kind of resilience that comes from surviving something truly terrifying. The people who lived through these home invasions didn't let fear control their lives forever. They found ways to cope, to adapt, to take back their sense of safety. Some moved to new homes, some installed security systems, some just learned to trust their instincts a little more. They became more cautious, more aware, but also more grateful for the ordinary. Uneventful nights when nothing happens and the world feels safe again. It's easy to think that these kinds of things only happen to other people, in other places. But the truth is, home invasions can happen anywhere, to anyone. They don't care about your zip code, your neighborhood, or how many locks you have on your doors. All it takes is one moment of vulnerability, one unlocked window, one stranger with bad intentions. And when it happens, it changes everything. So what can you do? Maybe you double-check the locks tonight. Maybe you leave a light on in the hallway. Maybe you talk to your neighbors or get a dog, or install a camera by the front door. Maybe you just listen a little more closely to the sounds your house makes at night and trust your gut when something feels off. Because sometimes the only thing standing between you and the darkness is your own awareness. But even with all the precautions in the world, there's no way to guarantee absolute safety. That's what makes these stories so unsettling. They remind us that no matter how careful we are, there's always a chance that something or someone could slip through the cracks. And when that happens, all you can do is hope you're ready,